Recording
All right,
and
give me like 5 minutes.
all right, cool. That's perfect. I'll give you 5 then. All right, guys. You are listening to another episode of Real Talk Chicago. This one is a very special one. You guys aren't even going to get most of this episode until Black History Month because of the gems and lessons that are about to be taught to us in this episode. This is Isaiah. I'm here with Edwin.
What's up, guys?
If you guys haven't, go check out the new website. All of our stuff is streaming. We're updating our store. We got so many things we're working on in the background right now. We appreciate. We've been growing a lot lately, and we appreciate all the listens, all the streams, all the shares. But we definitely are trying to build some type of platform on our website where you guys can comment and interact with us about episodes, under each episode and directly. But until then, hit us on the socials, comment in them YouTube sections. Today, we got a very special guest on the line with us. We have a brother that I'm going to allow to explain himself. He goes by the title Aseer, the Duke of Tears.
Peace, brother. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you doing our show. There's so many different topics that we're going to get into today, and I already know how I want to do the episode. I'm going to release about an hour up front for the people, but a lot of this is going to get broken down and released all across Black History Month.
That's what's up.
And hopefully we can end Black History Month, right? Because
Start.
you said that's a start?
So yeah, it's a start, man.
So Aseer, how would you describe yourself to somebody who is unfamiliar? Why is this black man on here looking similar to Nick Cannon as far as some of these people are going to be, they've never heard of you. They've never seen the fez. They don't know why that fez is red.
Right. It's so much, man. Wow, I don't even know how to explain it.
Why the fez, Aseer?
Well, every man or woman is supposed to be under their own vine and fig tree. You know what I mean? Everybody has the right to go and be who they want to be. And in this new world where you can literally trans into if you feel like a dog, like I just watched this thing, this guy decided he's a 45-year-old white male. He decided that he identifies as a 10-year-old little white girl. So he is now transing into that identity. You know what I'm saying? I'm using that as an example to say that we're in a time where people feel that whatever they feel they are, they can kind of phase and trans into. And there is no real question, you know what I mean, about it. So long as it is something, so long as what you're transiting into is still something that is viably connected to the decaying society that we're in. So all trans people, for instance, and again, I'm not picking on them, I'm just using an example. That whole movement is based on Big Pharma. That whole movement is based on Big Pharma. It's based on big medical surgical.
It's the pharmaceutical cartel, I call it.
It is. Or the pharmaceutical industrial complex. And they are the ones that are actively promoting the dialogue, the catchphrases, the little fake cultural idioms that they do. When you see certain queer people and they all kind of like speak the same and have the same type of jargon and shit, that's because they're all being indoctrinated by the same white people who are now transiting into being white females or black females or whatever they want to do. So in that, you have this whole engendered society where they're talking of that this thing that used to be agreed upon, that's still agreed upon as an actual mental illness, like gender dysmorphia, dysphoria, excuse me. is now being supported by mainstream society. So what that then means is that mainstream society is willing to support people with a mental psychosis, right? Now,
brief question to your point. Brief question. Right. Do you feel as though, because I can see exactly what you're talking about. I've been watching this whole thing as it morphs. Do you think that a portion of that is a part of the depopulation agenda?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's part of Kissinger's 101 program that he was trying to talk about back in the days. But the long-term goal is to get us to pervert our own future. The long-term goal is to remember they're about to be extinct. When I say they, I'm talking about everybody else that's not melanated. So what they're saying is they're projected by 2045, so-called minorities, i.e. Black people, are the majority again on the planet, in the country, in all countries. So what they need to do is pull a culling. A culling is when you get the herd and you lead them so you can keep them more manipulated.
Right.
And so that's what they're doing. So the trans thing is really just a means to an end, like everything else, because really the trans thing is really to get you to ultimately become a castrato or to be okay with pedophilia. Because once you say okay to that, once you say it's okay to have a religion in which the religion sodomizes children, right? You have then created a society by which the idea of children is now become maladapted, meaning that children are now not there to bring the society forward. Children are there to fuel the society.
Wow.
And so the criminalization of children, the breaking down of children, doing the mind of the psychological of the child, as well as the adult, as well as the observer, is create this idea and wedge between the purity of the child, you see what I'm saying, and the idea that we must protect it. To then flip the ideology to this child could potentially be a threat to me. So I have to do things to engender its growth and development. So I need to get it evaluated. I need to get it on drugs. I need to send it to daycare. I need to get it away from me. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So now this employs whole other industries. Now you have Head Start. Now you have daycare. Now you have this, right? But then at the same time, now you have more of a risk now for that child to get molested, for that child to get raped, for that child to get trafficked. You see what I'm saying?
Are we watching a lot of that end with these shutdowns? And like, I just had my first son last year. He'll be a year in November.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
Great.
Are we watching this all end now? Like how with this remote learning and like if you do have a family structure, it actually is keeping your child safer from these indoctrination camps.
It is, but at the same time, now you got to watch which ones that you join up with, because they actually doing shit where you could sign up for the online class thing, and then if your child is acting a certain way, they call the cops to come and do your child. So yeah, this
that sounds like Kamala Harris.
Yes, because again, that is a demon. What they used to call a headboard Harris. You know what I'm saying? When she top off all of the niggas in the DNC. At the behest of Big Daddy Willie Brown. You know what I'm saying? You have nothing but gangsters and Freemasons and deviants and sodomists running the country.
Right.
And they all together. The black ones is in it with the white ones. The white ones is in it with the black ones. The Korean ones in with the Chinese ones. And everybody's working together.
Because Freemason is bigger than any of these nation states, right?
Yeah,
Freemasonry.
Keeping this whole thing together. This is why nobody's telling on nobody. This is why nobody's going to jail. This is why nobody is actively coming out. This is why there's always a goddamn blood sacrifice ritual going on. This is why these always flashing signs on TV. This is why you can see pull up any celebrity.
A million of them doing that, right?
I was just about to say that. Pull up celebrities throwing up the OK sign. You'll see thousands of them.
Right.
Thousands. And I'm talking about going back to the time of, to the golden age of cinema, my nigga. Like,
what is that? What is that?
That symbol,
Yeah.
with okay symbol. Well, it used to mean okay, you know what I mean? But really, it's a mudra. All hand signs are mudras. This is what I was saying, going back to this Hindu pagan caste system shit. All of this stuff go back to that. So when you see Roman, like we were talking about the Romans, right? We were talking about the Romans and the Greeks, and we were talking about Zeus and all that, right? Zeus and all of that polytheistic godism, right? All of that we can trace all of that back to ancient India Hindustan with these so-called Brahmin Hindus that came in there to supplant the original dark-skinned so-called Aryans or you know, Vedas or whatever you want to call us, right? And so these guys came in and they wanted to be the head caste. So they had a tendency to do things with cows, and we wasn't with that. So we banished them out of that place. The Moors that banished them were a group of Moors who were in Southeast India at the time under what was called the Mauryan or the Chandragupta dynasty. This is going all the way back. Long story short, these dudes that got kicked out of India decided that they was going to move up, and they wound up going into what is now Ethiopia, but at the time we called Abyssinia or Nubia, right? And then these guys went in there, and then they wreaked havoc on the original darker skinned so-called Abyssinians, so-called Nubians, so-called Moro-Cushites, right? And waged war against them to the point where they forced them to move the capital. So the original capital was at Liabella, and they moved it to a place called Axum.
Was that Libya? Was that modern day Libya?
No, this was still in the regional borders of what we would call Ethiopia.
Okay.
Right.
This is where it was originally the capital, when it was still real Ethiopia, right? So, excuse me, Abyssinia. By way of Nubia, by way of Moro-Kush, right? So by this time of these people coming from India, now they adopt now Ethiopian culture. Now they're Ethiopians. They're saying, we're Ethiopians now. You guys that aren't Ethiopians, you guys are now under us, and we're going to move the capital to Axum. When they moved the capital to Axum, they then started to translate all of the ancient stuff that was there and take all of the Hindu stuff and turn it into Coptic stuff. So Vishnu becomes Jesus. What's his name becomes this, and so forth and so on.
Well, because they had a flood. Because they have a story with the flood. I mean, they have all that, everything that.
The oldest, remember, the oldest Christianity come from where? Ethiopia, right? Right. So if that's where it came from, that's the oldest one. That means then that, again, the whole Christianity thing in terms of taking over people's culture, forcing people to believe stuff, this started with them.
Right.
They did, like I said, after they moved to Axum, they took their Hindu stuff and then just put it into Coptic stuff. So this way they could still be Hindus low key, but now the iconography is different. Instead of it being Vishnu, we're not in India no more. We can't do that. So Vishnu gonna be Jesus. So this one Mary or Shiva gonna be Mary, and this one gonna be right. Then they leave there, create another little kingdom called the Sabaean or Sabbatean kingdom from the Nabateans, and then they move up into what we call Italy. And those guys, these Ethiopian guys, these Sabaean guys, they set up what we eventually call Rome. And now the same gods that's there, right? They now flip it. So now we go from being Vishnu to Jesus. Now it's not Jesus. And the Sabbatean thing, it went from Mary to Aliyah, right? Now we're in Italy, and now we're in Rome, and these Roman and these guys is on that. So now we go from Ethiops, because that was the original name of Zeus, to Zeus. You see what I'm saying? Then now it's Zeus Ethiops.
Right? And Mars, right? Because the Romans also, right.
Right, but remember, these are still Hindus, but now they're Italians.
Right.
See what I'm saying? But we're the same people, though, moving the agenda along.
Right.
So why was Ethiopia never invaded? Because Ethiopia is these are the guys that helped set up Rome. And Rome is what eventually helped set up Europa. You see what I'm saying?
And Ethiopia has more pyramids, right?
Yeah, but the ones that's there is not the ones that's there today is not necessarily the ones that built them. The ones that built them pyramids and stuff, these were the original Liabellans from the Toledo dynasties that had been subjected and supplanted so that way Victor the First, aka Selassie in them, could eventually.
That's what I was going to ask about.
Because Selassie's name, Italian name, was Victor the First.
Wow.
That's Victor, who was the king of Italy.
I've seen a conspiracy theory that Nipsey Hussle was supposedly of that lineage.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it because remember the Eritrean, this is why they call Italians guineas. Because the real Italians are Ethiopians. That's why Mussolini invaded Ethiopia. Because that whole thing, that whole Rome was set up by them. You understand? As a junction point for them to invade Africa through Europe. That's why Ethiopia was never invaded. You understand? Because they were launching the campaigns against everybody through Europe.
Right. It's like what deal did they? That's such an interesting. I mean, what the point that you make there, Aseer, I love because it's like there was a deal that was made, right? There's this conversation that goes on where it's like, well, Selassie just stood up to them, and it's like that doesn't. Things don't really work that way in life, and it's just like you talk about military, you talk about someone fighting, right? We're talking about war here. You know, we're talking. I mean, come on. So to think that someone just said, no, I'm not moving. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess you're not moving. We'll just go around you then. It doesn't happen.
And remember, like I said, he's Selassie he's Rastafari to the people he come up with. But he's also part of the royal family of the House of Savoy. So from the House of Savoy, they are Italians. Okay, you can look it up. Look up the King of Italy, Victor the First, and you're gonna see a picture of Selassie.
Wow.
But you ain't never heard these rosters and nobody talk about him in Italians like that, because they keep that on the low. Because what really happened was he decided, look, I'm playing both sides against the middle. We want to establish the Italian East Africa. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna allow the Mussolini and these dudes who was black to come up in here and cause the trouble. I'm gonna act like I'm in exile. I'm gonna go to Britain, which is Rome, right? I'm gonna get Elizabeth to bow to me, right? Because he's the head of the Holy Roman Empire, this guy, you understand? So on one hand, so he's Rastafari when he's with the Ethiopians, right? Then he bounced to his palace in Italy, and then is now fostering the invasion, you see what I'm saying? That Mussolini and them niggas is doing to set up Eritrea.
Right.
Which is what? Italian Ethiopia, under the sphere of the East African Alliance, which was what they call, at the time, they called it the Italo-Eritrean corridor. And so he then is playing both sides. You understand?
Would you describe him as a term that I know Edwin is interested in about as well? We've heard you use it a lot. Would you describe Mussolini as a dirty Moor?
You know, it's interesting because when you really get into historically what was really going on, you really had families going at each other by proxy. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I could see it as dirty. You know what I'm saying? Because on one hand, he's fighting against the people that technically he's the king of, right? But then at the same token, all's fair in love and war because they still practicing statecraft, and he's still part of an ancient house where that's all they've been doing since. You know what I'm saying?
I never heard that word, but context clues. Statecraft. Could you break that down?
Statecraft is how all governments work. All governments get to a point where they stop serving the people and only serve themselves.
Right.
So whenever you get to that level, statecraft is employed in order for that government to perpetuate its genocidal or infanticidal practices towards the people by posing them as a national emergency, a national event, a national epidemic, a national whatever. So the statecraft that the House of Savoy employed was to get their family members to establish different satellite kingdoms of the house, so that way they could extend their sphere of influence all over. So look at Jamaica, for instance. Jamaica was basically breaking away from Britain, and they sent a lot of money by way of Britain. But remember, Selassie got Britain under his thing because they see him as the Holy Roman Emperor. So I think they came up with a plan to bring the Jamaicans back into the sphere of British influence by way of Ethiopia, by getting this guy to be accepted as God by them. You understand? Because the so-called Moors, the so-called melanated people from what they call Jamaica, which is really Escamaica,
right?
They indigenous Arawak Tainos. They wasn't imported from Africa nowhere. They always been there. And when they rebelled against everything, they became known as Maroons because they marooned themselves outside of the Colon, the Christopher Colon system. Colonialism comes from the Colon family that created the system, who again was blacks, melanated, and was paid to do it by members of the Braganza, Portuguese royal family, and the royal family of Italy, Spain, which was Aragon. So they merged together.
Aragon was the name of the kingdom?
Aragon, right. Because we Moors shut the whole world down, put the whole world in timeout after the Dark Ages, and shut Rome all the way down, where they had nothing left. They were basically reduced to one little kingdom called the Stara, right? And we let them rock because we respected valor. And these niggas will fight to the very end. And then those Astarans, right, that first generation now that was born under Moorish rule, their children all became known as Mozarabs. Mozarabs. This is where we get to take the MOZ off and get the word Arab.
Arab,
right. The Mozarabs were the were the Christians who grew up and practiced Moorish culture and science and stuff like that, even though they were still Christians. So sometimes we'll see pictures of like white boys dressed in turbans and stuff, and we'll be like, oh, see the Moors. They try to make it like they was the original Moors. No, they were the little Moors. They were the Mudehars that grew up under our rule and decided that they wanted to live like us because that was the only way to come up.
You brought up a good point, and I know you're about to keep going. I saw you break down one time because I bomb on Freemasons a lot, and people are always trying to convince me otherwise. And to me, my reasoning is, I said, if the Moors are the original teachers, and also my ancestors, also my mother's family maiden name is just Moor. I don't know why, but it always made me curious.
You know why? You know why?
Right. Well, we know why. I mean, yeah, my last name is Moreno.
See?
You know?
Free Moor. See, a Moreno is a free Moor. See what I'm saying? A Mudehar is a broken Moor, like a little Moor. You know what I'm saying? So
is that a Shriner?
So that's why Dominicanos refer to blacks as Morenos. You see what I'm saying?
A free black.
Well, man, it look new. And then but then when they want to diss you, they call you Negrito.
Right, right.
Because one
interesting.
That's right. Because these are the ones that help sell us out. So if we talking about falling in Spain, like when we talking about we fell in Spain on the line, first of all, that's not true because there was no Spain in 1492.
Oh, shit.
So here you go. So that place was called España. And España, when you look at the real maps, that shit was over here. There's maps, and then there's what they call septentrional maps.
I've never even heard that word.
Me neither.
Or what they call maps of the extreme west, or what we in the empire refer to as Maghreb, the Maghreb al-Aqsa, which is the Morocco of the farthest west. So on those
that's the Treaty of 1787. They referenced that, right?
That's right. But then you could get the congressional record of 1845 and the annexation of Texas, and it tells you in it that the land belongs to the ancient Mauritanians, the Moorish peoples, and their Indian associates. Wow. The Indian associates are the mestizos, or what you would call the mestizo, right? Which are the white-looking Spaniard type Native Americans. And then you have what you call the Zambos, which are the real dark-skinned looking Native Americans with the straight hair. Though they are the Indian associates mentioned in that document. They are the admixture of our ancestors, me, you, brother, all of the melanated men, all right, who took wives or took concubines from the Siberians that came over here in the invasion in the 13th century with Genghis in that. But see, we don't get that history.
You brought that up in a different one.
And then what
Genghis
happened?
Khan invaded America, correct?
Yes, yes. What they call today, they'll call them. We call them Tartarians or Tartarians, but they'll call them Mongolians or whatever. But essentially,
interesting.
These Tartary Moors came over in the 13th century by way of the Pacific, from the California side. Then we had an influx of white Slavs that were imported by European cousins from the Atlantic side, right? But that shit didn't happen until the late, well, the thing that happened with the Mongolians, that happened in the 13th century. That's why we was still getting our stuff together throughout the whole 14th century. You see what I'm saying? Because we put in so much work to lock these dudes up. So what happened was they came over here with Genghis to do their work. We shut them down, and then we put them on reservations under heavy restriction. That's why they all live on that's why they all lived in teepees and all of that. And had no actual land, no houses. They didn't live in no houses and all that. We lived in the houses. We lived by the mountains. We built the pyramids and all that stuff that was over here. We built these niggas lived in the plains, in the field, had to eat off the buffalo and all of that. You understand? That's why when the buffalo went, they was done. Because they was homeless, because they not really from here. They got here in the 13th century, you understand? Which means what? 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that's like what? 8 centuries ago, whatever.
Wow.
Y'all just got here.
That's why they're native, but not in a tautness.
Native, because native means that you're somebody in your family, your mama was enslaved during the 15th and the 16th century. And I just told you who was doing the enslaving around that time.
Right.
That was us, and we created a whole race of people. So that's what we would do. We would just get to a point like, you know what? These niggas over here bugging. Let's get these Khazarians, and we're going to create a whole race. We're going to call these ones Italians.
Wow.
Then, okay, these ones over here, these niggas bugging. We're going to call them mestizos. Then these ones over here, okay, after certain 100 years or whatever, these the Zambos. Then these are the what you call it? You know what I'm saying? Like the Italians. Like none of these people was even considered white until 19th century.
You're right.
Because they wasn't.
These dots
all black, like me and you, up until this point, and then they created Reconstruction, and now got us thinking the exact opposite. They got us calling ourselves Slovaks. They got us calling ourselves Slovenians. Think about that. When you say that you're a slave, you're calling yourself a Slovenian.
That makes no sense.
You could never be that. You could never be that.
Wow.
You could never be that. You know why? Because you're not from there. That's not your, look, if I take a tiger from India and put that tiger in the Bronx Zoo, that's not a Bronx tiger. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's an Indian tiger in the Bronx.
Right.
They got you thinking, because these niggas live here now and speak English, they Americans. That's not how it works.
Wow.
That's not how diversity of citizenship works.
It's a logical fallacy, correct?
Yes.
They took notes. They took notes, and they're like, oh, okay. I mean, even because I'm connecting a dot, you mentioned something. The Moors, I mean, this is just something that's been done, right? And I'm thinking about Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracul. And I'm thinking about, like you said, this motherfucker's bugging.
Yes.
We gotta go. So you know, so there's this, everyone, this is, you can look this up, right? You can find out the Moors went and shut down Vlad the Impaler.
Facts, bro. And that's why they hate me, because Even the Moors, even a lot of Moors, like a lot of Moors have secularized themselves. They've either ensconced themselves in temples, or they've ensconced themselves on the internet, or they've ensconced themselves on this anti-temple thing, or they're low-key Freemasons acting like
Right.
Moors. You know what I'm saying? So everybody serving somebody else.
I call them agents for our listeners. What he's talking about is when I refer to these agents, so many dudes in every aspect of everything are just Freemasons, and that's what they adhere to.
And it has nothing, and again, Masonry is not a bad thing.
Right.
That Mason, we're all Masons because we're all born from our mother. You know what I'm saying? If you got a navel, you a Mason. You know what I'm saying?
Break that down a little bit more, please.
Mason means son of the mother, or maid's son, or Moor's son, right? So a real Mason is one who understands the essence of what the temple is, what the true temple is, what they when they Solomon's temple, really. So there's the physical one in the world, and then there's the one that we're ensconced with in our actual physical bodies, right? Which is the soul of man that we exist in. And so all men who are created equal have the right to stand at the perpendicular from the ground, from toes down all the way up, right? That procedure of becoming, right? Going from crawling, right? To going from not doing nothing, standing still, to crawling, right? To climbing, right? To walking, right? To running, right? To now walking your path in life, right? To then get to a point now when you get older and now you're hunchback over and now have to walk with a cane. That's the two-ball cane, one of the degrees in Freemasonry. So the idea of man is to, you go from the beginning, that the point that when you come out, you are coming out of order into chaos to go into the chaos to bring back the order. You understand? So Freemasons who come with this understanding are broken up into two frames, the Northern District and the Southern Jurisdiction. Northern Jurisdiction, Southern Jurisdiction. York Rite, Scottish Rite, okay? We created this whole thing to civilize these devils because they were savage and did not know how to cook and feed their food properly. They were eating each other. They were doing a lot of things as they were becoming more and more, as you would say, closer to becoming mankind. So we had to do things with them to bring them into the so-called human family. And there were elements of our family that decided to use that to their advantage by scooping these dudes up, giving them certain things, freeing them, accepting them, and then giving them tokens to then do business on their behalf against those of us that may not like having these Mozarogs or Mamelukes or whoever doing business like that, because we know that they're not the original. And that if this family is using them against us, then technically they may be trying to supplant our dominion. And then when we leave, these dudes that's been fighting for these other Moors, right, they get to then stay on our land that they kicked us off from and then pay rent.
So question then, based on what you're saying, to me, it sounds like being a so-called black Freemason is an oxymoron. It sounds like you working backwards.
Well, it is, because this is also, remember, the modern Freemasonry is also a bastard form of Jesuitism. All Freemasons are Jesuits, and all Jesuits are Jews. So these guys are all under Rome. Scottish Rite, the highest degree you go in that is 32nd degree. York Rite, 33rd degree. But the 32nd and the 33rd, it makes no difference, because what they're not telling you is that that represents the 32 or 33 degrees in the lumbar region of your spine, because you have 33 vertebrae. So when you are walking and reaching your 33rd degree, that is now you representing the devil, who has now been trained to walk upright. But you, original man, you was already born on the square.
Right.
So why you now putting yourself under a ritual we gave to somebody to civilize them and bring them back into civilization, which then means that you yourself, black man, are not civilized because you are still following the pale gods of Europe in a ritual that was created to actually show and prove to them who the original man is. So now, so that's like you just had a baby, right? So this whole thing symbolically is like you just had a baby. You changed the baby diaper. You want the baby to know how to change diapers. So you show the baby how to change the diaper. Now, because you want to see if the baby understands it, now you put the diaper on. And now you get the baby to come and change it. That's Freemasonry. That's why.
Wow.
You got people who don't even believe in no God, don't even believe in no fraternity, they don't even like people getting together, putting on aprons, right? Which basically represents that they had no phallus. That's what the apron represents. We gave them the apron because they had microphalluses, because they weren't fully matriculated.
It was to hide their shame, right?
Yes. So the apron was there to hide their shame. And then when they walked, we made them walk across the hot Arabian desert so much that it got to a point where they would fall. So we was giants on these giant camels and horses. These niggas was walking, so it got to the point we just got them a couple of little goats and had them ride the goat. That's why riding the goat, Raja, is a part of the Freemasonry thing. See what I'm saying?
Wow. Is this where that whole fucking goats or people fucking goat stuff stems from? Yes.
This is the ritual. This is the goat Raja, the Jolly Raja, the goat. Because that's what they got to do, because they had the lamb, the apron was made of lambskin. And then the goat is what they had to ride. So that's why they got to ride the good goat Raja. You see what I'm saying? Because that was the only thing that looked out for them when we was putting them in caves and banishing them during the Dark Ages again. And remember, a Dark Age is 2,160 years. So if you say that these people was in the Dark Ages, you understand?
Multiple times.
We don't know how long that was.
Right.
Because we can't even go by their dates, because little do you know, or we knew, in 1581, the so-called Catholic Church put out what was called the Per Intersissimus, in which they said that anything that happened prior to 1581 didn't happen. This is why all Christians believe that everything happened in the last 6,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and made that law.
Right.
Anybody that spoke about anything the year before was killed.
Right.
Black people doing this to other black people. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's stop giving these Caucasian people way more power than they deserve, because these people they couldn't even leave Europe. They couldn't even leave the damn cave. You understand? Until a certain time. So really, our people really didn't fall to nobody really that wasn't us until after, I would say, to be marginally real, between like beginning of the 1900s, like right when Birth of a Nation came out, and like 1920. That was like the height of their empire, believe it or not.
Hold on, Aseer, but McGraw-Hill told me that we were slaves. And even though when I went to my family reunion, I talked to my Indian family, or the ones who had kept that story, and they said they don't know shit about that story. They said we always been here. But McGraw-Hill told me that everybody who looked like us was slaves. So
that's the Freemason, and he's trying to get you to give up your birthright to some Africans who can't even get their own country straight. These people got their own countries, and they can't even keep the white man, keep themselves together, and all of that. And they tell us that we got to go and get them. Why is it that you never heard no Africans actually talk about how to track down the people they sold that was in their family?
Right.
Why is it it's only black people from America that are told, you know, you really from Africa, you should trace your roots back to Africa? But there's people darker than all of us on the phone, in India, in Europe, you know what I mean? In Philippines, in Australia, and they don't never go to them people and say, you know, you really from Africa? You're really an Australian African?
That's a great point, because even, I mean, my family's, they live in Colombia, and they're in Cali. They live in Cali, Colombia. And my grandma, I talked to my grandmother. My grandmother, she's darker than you. She's darker than Zeke. I mean, she's
a real Moor. She's a real Colombian.
Her
because all of that was Grenada. Just so you know.
Interesting. See, that's it. Because I asked her, where are we from? Where did we come from? Somewhere? She's like,
no. You always been here.
She's like, we've
always been here.
Like, no, my great-grandfather, she's talking about her great-grandfather, she's talking about her. I'm like, this is generations. And it's, you know, like we lived in a gold mining town, we owned land. So so my thing is, I'm like, holy shit, we had all this. And for some,
you still do.
Right.
You still got it. You still got it, more. It's still there. Because she remembered.
Right.
That means you remember.
Right.
And then that means then that there is no statute of limitation on fraud. You understand? Like these people, what I'm saying is that your grandmother, your grandmother's grandmother, your grandmother's grandmother was there when that whole thing was Grenada. Okay? All of that was Grenada. All of that was what you call they now call the last stronghold. All of that, all of everywhere. Again, the whole country from South America up to Alaska, from Alaska up to what you call it, all the way over to Europe, from the shores of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. This is how deep we was. But what happened was when the so-called Moors fell amongst themselves from falling from their noble nature and started allowing the Holy Roman Emperor, those type of Moors, to come in and hold sway over here, that's when it started to become a problem. And these are still Romans we're dealing with. You understand? And we're the ones that shut Rome down, remember? So once the Moors in 962 AD, Otto and Edith petitioned the Grand Seignior at Cordoba to reestablish the Holy Roman Empire. And then it was like, cool, we'll do it. We're going to let y'all do it, but y'all got to pay perpetual tribute. Cool. They did that. And then this is what established Germany as the premier of all of the so-called European houses, and why our Germania became the head of the Holy Romans at that time, right? All the way up until Napoleon came and then shut that down. Another black man shut that down.
Napoleon was a black man.
Of course, they're all black.
Wow.
They're all black. Remember, Josephine was black. Alexander Dumas was black. His brother Prince Murat was black. So how is everybody black but the main dude? I don't get it.
So Aseer, because we got a real diverse audience. They're gonna be like, okay, this dude's saying this stuff, but how does he prove this stuff?
Get the book Sex and Race, volumes 1 and 3. Get the book Origins of Humankind by Churchwood. Get the book Superman to Man by J.A. Rogers. Get the book Consecrated Talismans by Prince Uriel Bey. Get the book Ancient and Modern Britons by David May Ritchie. Get the book The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War. I had to stop naming books because they started to go up in price. One of the books I'm making $500,000 now. I ain't trying to get no more money.
Just so you have this, just so you can say this in the future. I know for a fact what you're saying is true, because every time I would watch your stuff, I would start putting books in my Amazon cart. And, you know, the day job I work, I would just be waiting till I got a little bonus and I would grab them. Books that I had sitting in my cart went from $200-300 that I was going to spend to $1,900.
Yep. That's how they doing more. That's how you know it's stuff you need to read, because they say if you want to hide it from something, put it in a book, right?
Yep.
So I literally, in my career coming up, I used to go and like how niggas would go and like boost clothes or boost whatever. I would be the book booster. We would go up to all the libraries, all of the what you call like the Freemasonic, the big Freemasonic library on 21st Street. I got walked up in there. Peace to Brother Dawood. He walked me up in there. I'm in there back in the day. I used to wear like my locks with like feathers, more like Indian type, more like Native American Indian type. So I would be up in there with the rain stick, the crow feathers, the locks, right, the bullet belt. I'm walking up in there and we stop, and I'm like, boy, they're not gonna let us up in here. He was like, watch. This elder walked in. They look, hey, Brother Dawood, how you doing? You going up to 43 or whatever? So I'm like, okay, he running shit up in here. You know what I'm saying? But it looked like, I'm saying, like,
Aseer, isn't that how it's supposed to be? Aren't they?
But what I'm saying is to say this. They had, so me and him walking up in there, right? They had some black brothers in there, booted Prince Halls, you could tell, because Prince Halls are immaculate with the ritual, if you didn't know. Big up to Prince Hall. When it comes to rituals, you're not dealing, nobody's crisper than them niggas. You know what I'm saying? They like the army with that shit. But they color struck, you know what I'm saying? And they messed up because they still following Rome. So long story short, me and brother though get on the elevator, and there's 3 of these brothers, immaculate, looking straight ahead like they don't even see us, right? The white man that's in the elevator with us look over and literally bows his head to us, literally. Now I know these niggas is bugging because they're there with him. You dig what I'm saying? To go to their little crossover ritual or whatever. But he giving us all the props. You know what I mean? He acts like our servant, right? And then that make me even think, because again, we're Moors. So when you put yourself under the ritual to become a Roman, you lose that which is naturally against that. Therefore, now you have to redeem yourself if you want to break away from that. Meaning that if you want to get out of that Freemason stuff or whatever, you're going to have to find a Moor to do a prayer release and get you out. Because again, man cannot serve 2 masters.
Have you done that before?
Say again?
Have you done that before?
Yeah, I got about 3 aprons right now sitting in storage, bringing these brothers through and having them worshipful masters and all that.
Thank you. I'm saying thank you.
But it's a private thing. And in the ritual, they have to ask forgiveness from the black woman that's present, because the Freemasons thing is about the man becoming the woman to give birth to the golden age. Therefore, that's why you'll see the man wear the skirt and the woman holding a sword knighting him. You see what I'm saying? Because they're worshiping inverted gods like Attis or
Baphomet.
Which is really a newer version. He's more like a new version. Because Baphomet came by way of a guy named Eliphas Levi. And Eliphas Levi is the dude they say wrote the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, that was prepared as the Moorish Circle 7 Quran. So they want to say because Eliphas Levi came out with the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, somehow that the prophet plagiarized it from him. But what Moors don't, or people don't read or realize is that Eliphas Levi got that directly from a dude named Pascal Beverly Randolph, who was the lord of all the Rosicrucians in the world at the time, who was a black man, who was also the son of Edmund Randolph of the Continental Congress. His mother was a queen from Madagascar, right? And this is the guy who built what we understand as modern occultism today.
Pascal Beverly Randolph.
Pascal Beverly Randolph, the first so-called, this is the guy who used to write Lincoln speeches.
Interesting.
He used to perform seances and shit at the White House to get the devils out when they was bringing the Freemasons in to do all the satanic rituals and all of that. He was the one fighting against that. Because all of this satanic stuff, all of this devil worshiping, all of this stuff can be traced right back again to our people. And I'm not calling our people devils. I'm just saying that we have to understand that everything, if we're the oldest people on the planet,
right,
that means we had to do it first.
Right.
There was a dynasty. Everybody talk about Egypt and how great the dynasty in Kemet and all that shit is and all of that. But certain dynasties they don't really get into. They don't really, they kind of gloss over dynasties.
They cherry pick.
Yeah, they cherry pick who they like. You're right, man. Great word.
How come they never teach us about what's in that Grand Canyon? I seen some statues in that Grand Canyon.
Yeah, because ancient Egypt is over here. New Kingdom Egypt is over there.
Right.
So
I'm even thinking about our infrastructure as a, we live in Chicago and no one talks about our sewage system. No one talks about, it's deep. This stuff is deep, and what we built on top of, right?
Bro, it's ancient.
Right.
These cities and these places that we're in now have always been here. They just, good job, Moisey. They just repaved everything and created a new history. They call it Reconstruction.
Right.
And they gave us this narrative, and they got enough so-called Black Masons to help them push it. And when they remade the country in 1871 and started to move on our governments that was already over here functioning,
they did a lot of stuff through paperwork theft, from what I see and understand.
Well, half the stuff they say they did, they didn't even do. They just wrote it down like it happened, and then killed anybody that could contest it. So you have a battle, B-A-T-T-L-E, and then you have a battle, B-A-T-T-E-L. A battle is something that is supposed to be a battle but never happened, but it's taken as the
Cold War.
That's what Civil War reenactments are. Remember, we were the Confederacy. There was the Monacan Confederacy. There was the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. There was the Iroquois Confederacy. There was the Seneca Confederacy. There was the Yamasee Creek Confederacy, because the Yamasees and the Creeks are the people we call the Mayans. When Mexicans call you a Mayate, and they say, Mayate, they call you a Mayan.
Wow.
So if they're calling you the Mayan, they can't be it, can they?
Wow.
Just like when they called you Sambo, it's like, oh, you Sambo. Sambo is God. That's another name for God in Asia.
Oh,
Sambo
shit.
Asia. Yes. Just like negus. See what I'm saying?
Negus, yeah.
Yeah, negus is nigga.
Right, negus.
Even nig means American Indian. So if the American Indians were turned into niggas, right? Then who are these Native Americans? Right. These are the other ones that's coming in here, occupying the land like everybody else and acting like their nationality existed prior to 1492, and it didn't. None of these people that say that they're there, remember, your grandmother is older than half of these countries that's out here today. You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
Your grandmother is older than Italy. My grandmother is older than Zimbabwe.
My family's from Belize. Are you familiar with the country? My family's from Belize. It used to be called British Honduras.
See? But what was it before it was British Honduras?
Right.
See?
Right.
See?
Right.
So that means it's always that. You know what that means, though? That means that it's still what it was before it was British Honduras.
Right.
But what they got us thinking, and this is where we got to flip it, they got us thinking that these are Caucasian people walking into these hot-ass African, hot-ass forests and going in there and taking it over and forcing these niggas to do them with just guns? No.
Wow.
The first form of imperialism and colonialism started with the Black European nobilities that left Europe and went into Africa and set up their little fiefdoms.
Wait. Aseer, one more time. You said Black European nobility. Explain that.
The original Black, so-called, I don't even like using Black, but the original melanated Europeans, the original Europeans that you read about in David McRitchie's book, that you'll read about in Ivan Van Sertima, African presence in early Europe. When you read about this stuff, when you really get into who is really European, when you get into the fact that Europa is a jet black goddess that they refer to now as the Venus of Willendorf. So you see that statue, what they call the Venus of Willendorf with the big breasts and the big this or whatever, that's actually Europa. That's what the Caucasian slaves, the Slovaks, and them was worshiping in the caves and all of that, while we was actually building the civilizations, living in the civilizations over there as the original modern day Europeans. And these Moors, the aristocratic Moors, can you see me?
Yeah, I can. We can hear you. I'm showing the statue you're talking about.
Thank you, Mo. The original aristocratic Moors, they maintained their estates through the Dark Ages up until, so you get the end of Rome, everything is shut down. We now go about re-terraforming the entire planet. And in that, we start bringing stuff from one place to the next, this and that, or whatever. While these Moors in Europe, they're basically still our cousins, though. So what they want to do is have their own nations again as new Romans. So we give them a charter to set that up. And we gave that charter to Otto and Edith. Pull up Otto and Edith, 962 Otto and Edith of the Holy Roman Empire. And then they said, cool. And then they, Otto and Edith, started to unify with the other people, the other European Moors that wanted to have their nobility as well. You see what I'm saying? Again.
Otto and Edith, we got pulled up.
There you go.
These look European.
Yes,
These
you
look
go.
like,
The one right there. You just passed it where they both sitting together, where they got brown. They look like copper.
Yep.
You see it, right? That's it.
It's on this page.
Aseer, you mentioned something that that I wanted to go back to, and it really caught my attention. The flip, right? The flip of the maps, the flip of direction, the flip of history. I mean, literally everything being flipped upside down. And even I'm thinking, we're having a conversation earlier about of masculine energy and feminine energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a big part of? I mean, is that something that's happening here? Is there this war where the masculine believes it needs to take over, or where did that come from, or how did that
So Freemasonry, that's the war of Lilith and Adam.
Oh.
The so-called Adamic races were the races that were created after what they call creation. So Lilith represents that which existed pre-creation. So when we read about the mythic creatures and the giants and Raphi and all of these things in the book of Enoch, the book of Giants, the book of Judas, all of the books that took out the Bible and stuff like that. When you read about stuff, you'll see that there's always been life. It's just that when stuff gets to a certain point, there has to be a renewal. There has to be a reset. You know what I'm saying? Right. So whenever we reset the planet is what they say, 24,896,000 square miles, right? Mm-hmm. In our little circumference of what we believe that our Earth plane to be. So we round that up to 25,000. So what that means is that every 25,000 years, we renew our history for another 25,000 years. Taught to us by Elijah Muhammad, peace be upon him.
What point of that are we at?
Now, technically, in the Moorish calendar, we're in the year, I think, 1440 or 1439. In the Asiatic calendar, we're 15,000, I believe, 474. The year 15,474 in the Asiatic calendar. The Ethiopian New Year just happened the other day, right? Like 2 days ago or whatever. So what this says is that everybody's in a different calendar. So if everybody's on a different calendar, then that means that this is like what they call time zones. You know what I'm saying? So that time zone is another representation when I'm talking about how the Taurus fields exist in the realm. Because how it is here right now is not how it is where you are. Therefore, the Taurus fields that are existing in your area are being affected by whatever's happening in that area. But that has no direct effect here until people from there come here, right? Because as individuals, we're also Taurus fields individually. So that means when I come in contact with yours and yours come in contact with mine, these fields overlap with each other. Right. So we're at a time now where the beast is about to be done. So his time on the planet is pretty much over. So what it has to do is engender us to find another way to keep it here in another form. So what I'll do then is encourage interracial relationships so that way I can get this white man to engender himself in the future as a mulatto Obama type man. You see what I'm saying? Who's still white supremacist in the mind, but he know that based on the lack of knowledge that so-called black people have, they will automatically hoist him to the top of them. That's why if you notice the face of most of the so-called revolutionary work right now is all so-called light-skinned people. And all the people dying are the black people. So Jesse Williams is out there doing what he need to do. Kamala Harris is allegedly speaking for black people, right? What's his name? All of these lighter-skinned people. And I say that not to exacerbate the colorism thing, but to show you at the same time that the people who are advocating for these people to stop dying, right, are people who phenotypically are the ones that the people killing the people want to replace them.
Right.
You understand? And so the dark people who are actually being murdered, who are actually being killed or whatever, instead of them unifying with each other, what they then do is try to go into other groups to seek protection. So I'm gonna marry this white girl for protection. I'm gonna marry this white girl. I'm gonna get with this Jewish person. I'm gonna become a Freemason. I'm gonna become a cop, right? But everybody else is basically doing the opposite. They're joining up in their own communities with their own people against our people. You understand? So there is a disconnect internally, I think, from how we see ourselves, then from how we're being seen, and then how we collectively want to get together. In the 1700s, one of the things they used to stop this from happening was a legal action. They referred to it as meritus manumission. And what that meant is, if you
Dr. Claude Anderson teaches about this for those of you who want to learn more about it.
Perfect example. Dr. Claude Anderson, didn't they just have a giant thing about reparations the other day, a couple of months ago, where they was in Congress talking about how reparations was going to do this and do that? Who did they have? They had this nigga Ta-Nehisi Coates,
right?
Nigga who write Black Panther,
right?
And another actor,
right? People who are against reparations, right?
People who are not qualified
to talk about
economic base on how to actually bring it to fruition. Well, Anderson talking about this shit before I was born. How come he wasn't on the panel?
Right.
Who was the person choosing the people to represent the Black people to actively get it expressed accurately in terms of the numbers? No, because what they do always is put actors, athletes, dancers, writers,
who they own,
expression to be the people to represent you. They do not want somebody that is actually political and apolitical, meaning that he's only for the people he's looking out for us.
Right.
In position. You see? So if we had our own so-called lobbyists that would be out there lobbying for us and getting our agenda put, I don't care. Then great, vote, do that.
Right.
But if you're voting for people that are just going to put other people in control over you, so they can get a little bit of crumbs off their table, then they're more of an enemy than the people they're trying to put in.
Right.
So
Right. Or these people that hide the story between the lines. You know, Ta-Nehisi Coates, a good example. I mean, it was interesting because his recent book, forgot what the name is. It was. I'm like, this is confusion. I'm like, this is not a good way to spread awareness or knowledge. You know, and then it's interesting to think where I'm like, not even me thinking that, I'm like, man, am I judging myself? Is that wrong of me to think that? Is it? I'm like, no, this is a better way that the people could learn that it's just direct. Like, why can't it be direct? This half truth nonsense that Isaiah and I constantly talk about, that we see where I'm like, look, I see what this person is saying, but it's not being said in a way that our people can understand.
No.
So now, to me, I don't know how I feel about this person. This person may be an agent.
Exactly, bro. And that's what I'm trying to say. We just have to assume that anybody that's in or signs a contract with these people is down with them. Once you accept that, if you was to go to a Hollywood party, pick up a rock and just throw it into the party, whoever hit is probably down with it.
Right.
Same thing. If you go to a political situation, go into any situation like that, and you will probably see the same thing.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. It's to the point where there's no way for original people in this country or any other one at this point to really follow their own vine and fig tree without having to take into account all of these other parasitic people who really don't want to see us win, who have been living off of our estates and our inheritance and our birthright for so long as they can remember that they forgot.
Right.
So they are used to us being in the bottom of them. They're used to us feeling like that even though they're not from this country, they can come here and do better than us. And they don't really want to look into why.
Right.
Like Africans over there call us Abakus. Or is it Abaku? Yeah, it's either Abaku or I think it's Abaku, which means like cotton slave, or Kafir. Or
I've heard Kafir.
Yeah, Kafir is what they'll call us. The Arabs will call us Abids, right? A-B-E-E-D. The Africans, I believe it's Abaku or Abaka or something like that. But essentially, everybody's living off the false narrative. Everybody's living off the idea that they are better than us. Excellent. That they are better than us, and they have the ability to create some sort of fake reality that we become subjected to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Thank you.
And if you could do us a favor, and I'm for sure gonna chop this up in different segments. This is gonna go on the segment where you talk about Freemasonry.
Yes.
Could you explain the term and history of boule to us? Because I know it ties right in with everything else.
Yes. The boule is a pseudo-Greek word that means advisors to the king, right? So they are advising what the king is supposed to do. The boule is also a so-called Greek, what they refer to as archon situation, which they believe that they are following the tenets of the ancient so-called Greek houses. But again, the term Greek or Greece is a word of art that was perpetuated. Okay. That was perpetuated by the same fake reconstructionists that created everything else. So when we speak of the boule, the original layman term for that would be the talented 10th. These talented 10th, who refer to themselves as archons, were a part of the so-called black bourgeoisie that was hand cherry-picked, as you say, by members of the integrated mulatto, so-called white Freemasonic societies to be able to move black people from having real political power to becoming basically wards of the state and dependent upon the new infrastructure that was being implemented through 1871. So the original Civil Rights Act of 1865, the original name of it was the Indian Act. Okay, so that shows, and then when you read it, the line as it goes down from the Indian Act to the Indian, I think, Reservation Act or whatever, and then it starts getting into black stuff. So one, that again, that proves that the American Indians were redesignated under the term Negro, Black, and Colored by a guy named Walter Pleckler, who himself was one of the members or was cool with Marcus Garvey. You can see Walter Pleckler on the podium standing next to Marcus Garvey giving his speeches. But then it made me look at that even different, because Marcus may have been actually a Marquise.
Huh.
You know what I'm saying? Because
wow.
I told you, the black nobility in Europa basically came here in America, or went into Africa after the Belgian Conference and locked it all down, right? But then they would send the resources and the money back to their white, Slovakian servants who are minding the store for them while they're gone. Then around 1912 to about 1913, they decide to cease to recognize what they refer to as the absolutist monarchies of Europa. When they say the absolutist monarchies of Europa, they talk about the black people, what they call the black nobility. They cease to recognize them as the dominant houses in Europe, and decided then that while they is out there in Africa.
Wouldn't that be considered a coup?
Yeah, this is exactly what it was. And while they was in Africa doing their thing, that's when they decided, well, what we're going to do is usher in the age of nation states. You see what I'm saying? And now they started to create fake states out of the original shit that they was in while the blacks in Africa is gone. So now they looking, the nobility in Africa looking like, well, damn, they done kicked us out and we can't go back. So now we got to stay. See? And
this is before or after South America?
I'm talking about the age, what they call the age of new imperialism, that started between 1881 to about 1928.
Wow.
And so they went in there and shut it all down and took over Africa and went in there. So it wasn't white people, wasn't Portuguese white people going meeting these Africans like Alfonso and then saying, hey, we white, you gonna be down with us. No, it was a black Portuguese people. It was black Belgianese people. It was black British people. It was black German people, you understand? Who had their nation states and came and got these Africans to join up with them. And then they both got together to come over here and displant us. But what happened, like I said, was while they were gone, their white counterparts over there decided that this was their chance to take over. And so they break everything up. So they use this time to assassinate the Archduke Ferdinand, another Moor, right? And then that ushered in World War I, right? And World War II. And during that war, who was fighting? It was the Crimean War. So you had the Italian, you had the Russo-Russian Ethiopian War. You had the Italian-Ethiopian War. You had the Turks fighting this. And while this is happening, all of the absolutist monarchy nobilities is fighting to hold on to what they got, because these people, they're slaves now, is creating this new Western ideology that they have always been in control. And so what happens now is they're stuck in Africa. They can't go back. The white boys then put white people on the throne, and now they're acting like they're the nobility. You see,
Right.
Same thing happens here in the United States. Same thing happens in Asia. Same thing happens in Australia, right? Now the original people, who was at the top, now they at the bottom. Now they're going to use this as a means to ingest the whole new system. Because the only slave, the global slave class, was now going to be uplifted as now the new. So in the old era, the old masses become the slave, the new masses, you see what I'm saying, it gets reversed.
Right.
And then create this whole reconstructional history, give that to everybody, and now all these nation states get together. The Africans now, they're stuck in Africa. These European Africans is now stuck in Africa. They can't leave. So now they have to ensconce themselves even further. But they still need to maintain their European ties. So they do all their banking. They do all their wives. That's why all the African dudes from the Kwame and Nkrumah on down, and during that era of colonial independence, they always married to white women. Because the babies that they have from them white women now go on to become the rulers of that land, and eventually give them the power to go back to Europe and take it over. Ain't that what's happening now? How many Africans, you know, when they go to holiday, do they come to America? No, they go to Europe. When they do their banking, they go to Europe. When they set up, they go to college, they go to Europe, right? Right. So now European Africans, that's now that real Africans is living in these places. They can't go back, so they're doing all of their business with the Europeans still. And that's what's still happening. So the pact for the continuation of colonialism that these African nations is paying these European nations, they're actually really paying back into their own family estates. But they're just not telling the indigenous Africans that, because the Africans don't even know that these people not there. But every so often, the white man throw you a bone. Now I'm gonna show you how show and prove this for everybody. Anybody seen the movie with Forrest Whitaker when he was playing Idi Amin?
I know what you're talking about, and I didn't. The King's Speech or something like that.
What was it called?
The King's Speech.
It was called The Last King.
The Last King.
Scotland.
The Last King of Scotland, right? Oh shit!
About Idi Amin. Why would an African from Uganda be the last king of Scotland? You know why? Because his Ugandan name was Idi Amin, but his European name was Prince Henry from the Duke of Gloucester from Scotland.
Wow.
I'm about to show that on the screen.
Told everybody, but everybody missed it because they had us bugging on the fact that the shit was about the white boy. I told you they put the white boy in there to throw you off. He's always the decoy. He's always the what you call it? The one to throw you off. Yes, he always the one to make you think he running it. But remember in Django, they showed you again.
Yeah, they did.
Steven was in there signing the checks, pouring the cognac, right? With the keys to the house, but who was he fronting like was running this shit? What's his name? Carl Candy, right? The white boy.
Yeah, Candy, Candy man. But he wasn't. He man, that's real. That's real.
That's what's going on.
That's real. He was running the whole house. Dude was running the whole house. He was running the whole plantation. Ain't nobody listen to Candyman. Ain't nobody listen to Mr. Candy.